Hello and welcome to Counterpressed on The Ringer and Spotify. Welcome to our first Women's Football History episode as we take a look at the history of Arsenal Women, one of the biggest football clubs in the history of women's football. In 39 years, they amassed 63 major trophies and changed the face of women's football in England and across Europe. On today's episode, we dive into that history and talk about the legacy and impact Arsenal have had on women's football. I'm excited to be joined by Tim Stillman, a familiar name for many Arsenal fans who covers the club for Arseblog, and Kirsty Pealling, who spent her entire career at Arsenal from the club's foundations in 1987. Tim, Kirsty, thank you so much for joining us on our first Women's Football History episode, and what better place to start than with Arsenal. Tim, I don't want to give away your age here, but obviously Arsenal Women were formally founded in 1987. Mm-hmm. So how old will you have been when this club were formed?
I was 3 years old when Arsenal Women were formed, so not really part of my orbit at that stage. That kind of happened a few years later in the 90s.
But still a diehard Gooner at the time. You just maybe didn't quite be able to process it.
Oh, absolutely. So Arsenal's been in my family for over 100 years, actually. So actually Arsenal and Spurs were quite a North London kind of family. So yeah, absolutely. I was season ticket holder on the men's side since I was 8. So yeah, very much so.
And Kirsty, it's so great to have you with us. And I know, you know, Tim interviewed you in the season just gone for the Arsenal programme. So lots of Arsenal fans may have read that and kind of learnt about your time with the club. But you are someone who pretty much played for Arsenal Women from the foundations of the club or just after. For how many years were you a part of that club?
I think it's about 19 years. Yeah, 87 to 2006 when I retired. Yeah, so about 19 seasons. Yeah.
And what's kind of very frustrating, but so much a part of the lack of archiving and history within women's football is we actually don't know just how many appearances you made.
No idea. I think they've got some record that they did. Yeah, I think it's up to 277, but it was way more than that because obviously there's no history. They didn't record the results or any stats from that earlier period. So, yeah, I don't know how many I hold. I'd say it'd be pretty up there.
But
I think it's incredibly unlikely anyone played for Arsenal more than Kirsty.
Yeah, we think that Kirsty's likely the record appearance holder. So we'll give you that.
Thanks.
We'll give you that label, Kirsty.
Thank you.
We're going to dive into some of that amazing history on this episode. So let's start with the foundations of Arsenal Women in 1987 after this. Tim, paint the picture for us, because actually, you know, lots of people may imagine that Arsenal Women had existed even longer than 1987, but in fact it wasn't until 87 that the club were formally founded by Vic Akers, who was working on the men's side at the time. So tell us how Arsenal Women came about.
Yeah, it's really interesting because effectively they started really just as an arm of Arsenal in the community. So I don't think when they were formed there was this big idea about winning loads of trophies and attracting crowds. It was an arm of Arsenal in the community, and at the time in 1987 Vic Akers and a guy called Alan Sefton, who is still at Arsenal and Arsenal in the community, were looking to kind of form a women's team as a bit of a local initiative. And there was a woman who worked for Arsenal in the community called Alicia O'Grady, who sadly, I believe, passed quite recently. But she worked at Arsenal in the community and she played for Aylesbury. And what happened was Aylesbury's manager was about to emigrate to Mallorca, and so the team was about to fold. And also nearby you had Islington Ladies, and I think they were about to fold as well. So Vic Akers went and spoke to the Aylesbury manager, whose daughter, Jill Sale, played for Aylesbury and came over to Arsenal. And Arsenal basically absorbed Aylesbury Ladies and in effect absorbed Islington Ladies as well. Basically took the best players from those two teams and formed a football team. And That was it. It was kind of on a par with Arsenal used to have a celebrities and ex-pros 11, like as a community charity initiative. That's kind of what the women's team started at. As there was a bowls club for the community as well. It was very much a community initiative, and most of the players would have been drawn from quite nearby as well.
Well, and it's actually really common is even now that a lot of women's teams exist as a branch of the trust or foundation within the club. Part of that is a funding thing, but part of that is because many clubs, unfortunately, are still not brought in under the umbrella of the men's side. So, Kirsty, how did you first interact or find Arsenal Women? What was your first relationship like?
They sort of found me, really, Vic. I went to my school, Haggerston School in Hackney. I grew up. A teacher's entered into a competition called the Met Police Five-a-Side, which was the first competition we'd ever played in. And it was through that, actually, playing in one of the rounds. We ended up playing, I think it was the quarters or the semi-finals at Britannia Leisure Centre in Hackney. And, yeah, we played in that, and it was a conversation with my parents afterwards that Vic had said, like, about me coming down. So it went from there, really. So I was 13, yeah, that's when I first went down to the Arsenal. And then we used to do something like after school clubs up on a Friday up at the JVC Centre. So I used to get on the 236 bus and get off and go and play football up in the centre there. But yeah, it was through that, really.
How old were you when you made your debut for the first team?
So I was 14. Yeah, I come on. I think it was a quarterfinals match against Friends of Fulham. It was a WFA Cup game. Well, they called it WFA Cup then, not the FA Cup. And I come on, one of the players got injured. I think it was Sarah Ritchie, the left back, and I come on for her. I've played about 20 minutes and done well, actually. So probably had a bit of a blinder, someone said. My mum said that to me anyway. Yeah, and it sort of started from there, really, and I never looked back.
And what was the team like at the time? Was it a mix of people like yourself who were teenagers still at school in the early years of their football?
Yeah, very much so. Like, obviously, as Tim mentioned earlier, there was that merge between Aylesbury and Islington, and obviously I was a local girl from Hackney. But as part of that programme, they were like the YTS programme, so the likes of Michelle Curley and Sarah Ryan and Sarah Mulligan was part of that, and they were sort of 17, 18 years of age, so there was a couple of years older than me. So there was quite a strong younger group there. And it was a mix, really, of ages. When I first got invited down, I remember going to the Highbury, my parents dropping me off and going up the marble stairs and meeting in the actual dressing facilities there. My first session was running around the track. I used to run around the Highbury pitch, do like horseshoes, go upstairs and stuff like that. And I remember just walking in and thinking, oh my God, this is like nerve-wracking. Like, because there was a lot of older players, dare I say, in the 20s and 30s, and I was just like a teenager walking in. And my friend Angeline also was there, Angeline Russell, who had also been asked to come down as well if we played in the same school team. And I was like, I don't know about this. So I remember doing the training session, and it was running, really, and we went up and played a bit of football. And then my mum come and picked me up with my dad, and they was like, how did it go, how was it? And I was like, well, I don't like it. I was like, what do you mean? I said, well, there's just so many older girls there, like, I don't know. And obviously Mitch and Sarah Ryan, and for no reason I don't think was there that time, so it was just my first impression, so it was a bit daunting. And Mum was like, I'll just give it another go, like, because she's a massive Arsenal fan. Go on, get back. And I was like, she went, just give it a couple more weeks and see how you get on. And then I come back, and then I was like, okay. And then Mitch and all the girls that was there, a little bit younger, and they took me under their wing a little bit. And I never looked back, really. I'm glad my mum gave me that piece of advice to go back.
That's something very common as well with, at that time there would have been like very few girls' clubs or academies. So a lot of the journeys of players until quite recently would be played with boys till the age of 13, 14, and then straight in with adult women. So there was always that kind of, I don't want to call it a cliff edge, but I think that was quite a typical experience.
God, no. There was no... I like to say I played on my estate, I played at my school. I didn't really know there was women's teams out there. When I got invited to go down to Arsenal, I was like, I didn't know what to really expect. I'd never played 11-a-side match. I just used to play 5-a-side, 6-a-side football. So yeah, it was really daunting. But they embraced me as well. They was lovely. It was, everyone made me feel welcome. But it was just that initial thing, thinking, oh God, I don't know about this.
But what's funny is I think we've all been in that position as well, in those environments. I remember going to first sessions of new teams and thinking, oh God, this is scary, like meeting all these new people, even starting a new job, things like that. It's that human feeling, isn't it? How often were the team training at the time?
Twice a week, so we used to train at the we used to do a little bit of running around the Highbury, around the stadium, horseshoes and up the stairs and all sorts, and then we'd go into in the ball court, the JV sitting centre, and we'd train indoor in like a 7-a-side pitch on a Tuesday and Thursday evening, so like 8 till 10 o'clock at night. So everyone had been at work or school or college, and then we'd come and train for a couple of hours. And that was it, twice
and then
a week.
Games on a Sunday?
Games on a Sunday, games on a Sunday. So I was getting picked up from my house and getting dropped off here, and just like carpooling. Everyone used to jump in the car and get lifts here, there and everywhere. Vic would occasionally drive a coach with us all, but it was, I had a lot of support with that, with fellow teammates and that, helping out, and because my dad worked away a bit and he wasn't around as much, because of work and everything, and my mum didn't drive, so they all stepped up really and helped me a lot with that, so it became easy.
And what was Vic like to work with? Because when you see him in media environments, like, he's quite quiet, shy guy, and I'm always so intrigued what he was like to work with as a coach. Is there this kind of completely different side to him that we, as in the modern game, will actually never saw, or is he like that all the time?
He's pretty much like that.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong, he'd lose his rag a few times, quite a few times, but no, generally he's quite quiet person, but when you knew when he wasn't very happy, you certainly knew about that in the dressing room, for sure, but he was fair, and everyone looked up to him. He had a huge amount of respect from the players, did so much for us and at the team at the time, and where it is now, he's been the founder and been part of that. So he was like, he'd done everything. He was like the physio, drove the bus, he got all the kits. He was obviously combining that with working with the men's team. He's given up his weekends to manage us and evenings, but he's pretty much how you find him, really.
With Vic as well, such a critical thing for Arsenal ladies' history and how they became quite successful quite quickly. There was a bit of a restructure because Vic was working at Arsenal in the community, and shortly after George Graham was appointed as manager of the men's team, he wanted to do a bit of a reshuffle. So Vic moved across to become the kit man for the men's team, and the reason that's so critical is because that gave Vic access to facilities, because he was working on the men's side, kit, which was very important. Lots of players wore either hand-me-down kits but also boots as well. So he had access to equipment. You talk about the JVC Centre, which was a little sports centre behind the clock end. And, when Arsenal would go to sign players, he was able to take them up to the marble halls and, do that big first impression. So the fact that he was so linked on the men's side was really, really critical in terms of equipment, in terms of getting support as well. So from David Dean, the vice chairman, he had the ear of those people. So when he went to go and ask for funding and things like that, he wasn't very far removed from those people at Arsenal.
And Kirsty, when did you start to see the resources change? Was there a moment where, obviously, even until recently, women's players were still wearing men's hand-me-downs that were ill-fitting, but in terms of things improving from the 87 first years, where it was very much trying to piece this team together, that was broken parts of other teams and new girls joining, year on year, season by season, did you start to see things change? And then as a result, performances and results were getting better as well?
I think it's difficult to compare because obviously Arsenal was my one club, and when I was there, it felt like special anyway, because we was training at the ground, so to speak, and next door. We had those opportunities to do that. Transport was provided. You know, we was given some training kit. Yes, it was hand-me-downs and it was all men's kit, but it seemed quite a privilege anyway. It seemed like we was getting quite a lot. And obviously, as years progressed, as Tim mentioned, obviously Vic was then provide us with football boots and things like that. We'd got some sponsorship, I think, as well. We had access to the facilities, but bearing in mind, we only trained in a 7-a-side court. We never trained on an 11-a-side pitch at all. So it would only be around occasions where we was preparing for a big game or for an FA Cup final, or that we'd actually go and train at the men's ground. And you had to be quite specific where you trained or what building you accessed. So there was still that sort of, you got access, but it was a little bit limited. And obviously as the years got on, and I'm sure now, well, I'm sure the Arsenal got their own facilities now. Yeah. It's a lot different, and they're not sharing with the men. But obviously you do notice those things. Obviously we're supported with travel. We used to travel on the planes, you know, abroad and stuff like that. I mean, I know many clubs have to fundraise for themselves and do all those things that happen. So you notice the differences, of course, along the years. But I guess at the start, I still felt that we had more than everyone else. And we was very fortunate because that was obviously Vic. And obviously Arsenal was very supportive of the women's side at that time. So
the other thing Vic did that was very critical as well is obviously all this is unpaid really in the early years, but again, because he had like the ear of people at the club, he found a lot of the players' jobs at the club. So be they admin jobs. Alex Scott worked in the laundry and things like that. So when I used to get my season ticket, up until about 10 years ago, you'd write to Kira Grant because she was like effectively the club secretary. Emma Byrne worked in the office. So it was kind of, and that also made it attractive for players to come because you could maybe get a job at the club and then effectively it kind of becomes paid, and that was a big competitive advantage Arsenal had.
And so much of the history of women's football, even up until very recently when, you know, all of the WSL went fully full-time, players talk about the jobs that they were juggling at the same time. So once you left school, Kirsty, what was some of the jobs that you were trying to manage alongside playing for Arsenal? So
obviously school, managing exams, etc. was quite challenging. Then after I left school, I went to sixth form college. I was doing A-levels again, you know, trying to fit in football around doing my studies. After that, I went on to university, but I stayed in London because obviously I was playing at Arsenal at the time. I was working not far from here actually, in Jubilee Hall Market in Covent Garden, working in my friend's family business, Billy Bunter's, a sandwich shop, so I used to do that on weekends.
Is it still there, do you think?
It's like an Italian type restaurant now. Okay. It's in the back of Jubilee Hall Market, yeah.
Oh, okay.
So I worked there. I did, when I was at Arsenal, when I was a bit younger, during the summer, I'd go and stuff season tickets in and then they get post. I got a bit of money for doing that. So, yeah, balancing that. And then obviously, when I left university, it was, okay, I need to get some employment. So I was working, I remember starting, I did graphic design. I couldn't get anything in that. So I ended up working with the Corps Commissionaires, like as front of house. And that was like 8 till 8, like long days, and sometimes 6 till 8. And then I'd get home and then quickly have to get to training. So I remember going away on trips and taking work with me and sending it off. Like it was crazy. But those are the sort of things that you do to play, you know. So that's what we all did, really. Didn't get paid for it, but no one of us really thought about getting paid or getting money to do that because it was our passion and we loved it. So obviously towards the end of when I played, we started getting a little bit of money, which was nice, but yeah, it wasn't really the purpose for me for playing.
And Tim, it took a couple of seasons actually before Arsenal started to win any trophy. It wasn't like this overnight success where Vic pulled the team together and they were winning everything. Founded in 87, but it wasn't until 92 winning that second division title that then got them promoted. And that was kind of the beginning of what would be an incredible run of FA Cup, first FA Cup coming in 93, won the first division in 93 as well.
Yeah, won the treble.
And things just started to kind of, snowball and they were winning everything.
Yeah, absolutely. So they get promoted from the second division in 1992. 92-93 they win the treble straight away, so you can see that they're, and again you see a lot of this in women's football history, like that period where Fulham in the early 2000s were highly funded. They played Arsenal in a cup final and they were still in the third flight at the time, but they were favourites for the final because they'd just had all that funding. But yeah, I think kind of word was getting around about some of the facilities available at Arsenal, the fact that maybe some of the players could find jobs. Another probably slight bit of serendipity there was a striker called Naz Ball, who was probably the best British striker at the time. She was actually in the RAF, and she was playing for Aylesbury because she was posted there. So when Aylesbury became Arsenal, she got reposted to Hendon. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been able to go. So that was quite critical as well, because effectively Aylesbury's best player was able to come across, and Naz Ball's goals were a huge part of those kind of early successes. Also, Arsenal got a little bit of momentum behind the women's team. People of a certain age might remember this. There was a boxer called Michael Watson who had a really tragic accident in the ring, and he was a big Arsenal fan. They held a big benefit for him at Highbury. Thankfully, his injury, actually, he recovered a lot more. It was a brain injury. He actually recovered a lot more than people thought. But as part of this kind of fundraising event for Michael at Highbury, they played Arsenal versus Donny Bells at Highbury as a bit of an undercard event, but there were over 20,000 people there. And this Arsenal-Donny Bells rivalry really defines, I think, probably most of the 1990s in women's football. These were the two big teams really competing with one another.
Yeah, and when you look at the FA Cup finals of that era, both those sides keep popping up, and both those sides had a lot of success during that period. And actually, when I was looking at, because we're sort of about to enter those real glory years for Arsenal at this point, but when you look at how many of their 14 women's FA Cups came before the WSL was even founded, I think it's about 10 of Arsenal's 14 came before we even get to that WSL era. So they were so dominant at the time. I mean, Kirsty, what was it like playing as part of that squad? Talk about some of the rivalry with Donny Bells as well.
Oh God, yeah, there was some ding-dongs between us and Donny Bells, so to speak. Yeah, I remember that game though. That was for a league, I've decided.
Yeah,
I think
it was. It was like a big
that.
league
and
game.
The crowd was amazing. Yeah, they had the temporary stand-up, didn't they, at the back? And yeah, we played after that event, and yeah, we won. I think it was, I can't remember.
Naz Ball scored twice, I think, in that game, but that effectively won Arsenal the title.
And that was probably the biggest crowd I'd happened. Yeah, it was like Tim said, it was about 20,000 people there, so that was pretty cool. But yeah, us and Donny Bells, oh God, yeah, there were some cracking games. Yeah, there was a lot of banter between both teams, I think, as well. I remember we was going up there to play. I think it was another they always felt like league deciders when we played. It was always, because it was mainly between us two. Obviously that changed over the years, but I remember we read the programme notes that had been written by the manager in the dressing room prior to the game. I mean, you didn't really need much more inspiration than that. It was basically, oh, here we are, the southern softies coming up north, and with their residential big estate houses, and like making out like we're all wealthy and everything, like proper. And it just sort of like wound a few of us up, particularly me, who grew up and was very proud of growing up on a council estate. And I was like, suburban houses? What are you talking about? Like, so that sort of rallied a few of us, like inner city kids at the time. So, but yeah, no, there was great rivalries. They was a fantastic team, and they was full of England internationals. Like they was. And we relatively wasn't. I mean, we started to get a few players come, around that period, like coming into the team, but those were special games.
These FA Cups as well were taking place before the Women's FA Cup final was moving to Wembley. Obviously, there was a period where it would get kind of moved around and be played at different grounds. So what were some of the stadiums that you were playing these huge FA Cup finals in?
Sort of like Championship, I guess, equivalent of that. I mean, we did play at Wembley, the old Wembley. We did play a League Cup final there against Knowsley. I don't know if many people knew that, but
that's now Liverpool. Knowsley became Liverpool.
Yeah, we won. I think it was the League Cup there, and that was after a men's fixture like a playoff game. So yeah, that was pretty cool, playing at Wembley, the old Wembley. Played at Anfield. That was that was probably one of the top stadiums. But FA Cups, probably like QPR, I think Millwall, sort of stadiums. I think it's Oxford United maybe won back in the day. Yeah, lower leagues or championships equivalent. Not really Premier League. Yeah.
Quite a few, because I'm from South East London, so there were a few at the Valley in 99.
That's right, yeah.
Selhurst Park was used a couple of times. There was a great final,
Thanks, Tim.
98 at the Den, where Arsenal play Croydon and win.
Oh, don't mention that game.
In the last minute. Hope Powell playing for Croydon as well. But the footage does exist of that.
Oh, that's terrible.
I really advise people to look up the winning goal.
No, please don't watch that. It's the worst highlight reel ever. I give away a penalty in that game. Oh, God, that was a shocker.
Still thinking about it.
I know.
All these years on,
and I still don't think it was a pen, to be fair. But that was a good game.
And who were some of the names you were playing with? Because you've spoken about, some amazing England players. I imagine not only at Donny Bell's, but also that you were playing with at Arsenal. So who were some of the names that you remember being like, wow, I can't believe I'm playing with this player?
Well, I remember Marianne first coming to Arsenal. Particularly because I'd seen her, but I'd also met her obviously because I was part of the sort of England set up then.
This is Marianne Spacey, who obviously played for
Max,
England.
Sorry. So, but I remember thinking, oh God, that is a signing for sure. Just based on that, and I guess for me, I was more impressed with just the person that she was as well. Like, she was very humble, settled in straight away, and was a really amazing addition to the team. But I mean, I've played with some really, really good footballers. I mean, Kelly Smith, obviously, say no more. And she was a young Kelly Smith, obviously. So what a player she was. Jane Ludlow, I think, really underrated player. I think crazy off the pitch. And pretty much on the pitch as well. But she was a fabulous player. Angela Banks, I thought, incredible. Fleets. Oh, there's so many. Emma Byrne in goal. Kira. Like, there's so many players.
And a nice bit of Arsenal lore is that Jane Ludlow and Kira Grant are married.
That's right.
So two of Arsenal's greatest ever players, again, right up there in terms of appearances and trophies won. Yeah. Married with children for some years now.
Yeah. The list is endless. Really, the amount of players, and against really top footballers.
And as we sort of enter the early 2000s, Tim, and before you retire, Kirsty, there's a period from 2003 to 2009. So you retired in 2006, I believe, right, Kirsty? Right, yeah. So the 2003, that is the beginning of what would be a ridiculous, unbeaten, invincible run for Arsenal women. Far more historic and lengthy than even what the men achieved in their Premier League unbeaten run. But it's 108 consecutive league games without defeat. You were part of sort of half of that journey, Kirsty. I do think women's footballers maybe got better at remembering that period, and obviously we speak about how Arsenal and Donny Bell's were kind of the two dominant forces, and obviously the game wasn't as competitive as it is now, and if a team had resource and had a great team, you was probably more likely you would go on these ridiculous runs. But it was a hell of an achievement, Tim.
Yeah, absolutely huge. And it started to change around this time as well, because you get teams like Charlton start to become really competitive. Everton as well. Birmingham City really start to become very competitive. And one of the things, though, that's quite striking about that era is Arsenal do win the league every year, but they don't always win it by loads and loads of points. So there was 2004 Arsenal, they actually win the league at Highbury on the final day, and I think maybe they beat Charlton on goal difference or something. It was decided on the final day, because the game was played at Highbury after the men had played Leicester City and completed their own unbeaten season that day. But what really started to happen, I think the other thing is as well, Arsenal were losing big players as well. So you mentioned Kelly, but obviously the US was the place to be for a lot of these players. So Kelly would go to the US.
And there was obviously the US. There's been iterations of professional leagues that have come and gone, but at the time when the professional leagues were running, they were paying good money, so it was a place to earn a living and then come and play for England. Yeah,
and in the early 2000s, Fulham have a brief period where they go professional, and Katie Chapman goes there, Rachel Yankee goes there, Marianne Spacey goes there. So Arsenal were losing big players, but they were absorbing it, and they were bringing through young players like Leanne Sanderson. I think Leanne's still a very familiar figure for people because of her media work in particular, but the amount of goals Leanne scored, it's better than a goal a game.
Yeah. Cracking player.
And like when she's a teenager, she's scoring 40 goals a season. And Anita Asante comes through as well at centre half. And so as much as they lose players, there's this production line, but then there is a constancy with players like Jane Ludlow kind of stayed. Rachel Yankee went to America for a bit, went to Fulham for a bit, but people like Faye White, Jane Ludlow, they really stay and form the kind of cornerstone. And then you've got these young players coming through. Karen Carney comes to the club as well when she's a teenager. She really takes off at Euro 2005 as a 17-year-old. Is probably England's immediately best player at the age of 17. And at that time, the only club players like that would go to would be Arsenal. Now a player like that, it would be, is it Arsenal, is it Man City, is it Chelsea? At that time it's only Arsenal you go to. So there was this kind of reservoir of great players, but it wasn't, there was a bit of a core there, but Arsenal just always had access to the best players.
And Kirsty, you were still in this early 2003 at the start of this ridiculous run, you were still playing as part of the team. Tim mentioned some of those youngsters that were coming through. As the years go by, were the emergence of those youngsters, was that making you kind of look over your shoulder and think, wow, we've got some talent coming through?
Oh, yeah, 100%. I mean, from an earlier age, though, I'd already made the sort of decision that it'd probably be like my early 30s that I was going to give up football. I'd also battled health condition since I was 9 years of age, so I've diagnosed with like chronic nephritis, like a kidney condition. So I had that all throughout my career, and football obviously was a massive factor in helping me like keep that without having gone down the road that I eventually had to. But health for me was obviously then becoming a priority. So 2004-5 onwards, I was sort of struggling a little bit, but also realising that there was Alex Scott coming through and other younger players coming through. And when you know, like you've given as much as you can, and it becomes so much more difficult. You're working full time. I was trying to manage a health condition, get into training that then moved all the way up to Hearts Uni. Like it just, I was tired. So I'd already had that. I was really mentally prepared for obviously when the day come. So I sort of made that decision midway through the season, and I'd said to Vic, look, that's it for me now. Like I remember playing, I hadn't played much. I got injured in the Charity Shield game pre the last season I was in 2005-06, and I felt the best I'd ever felt. I was like 31. I was like, if this is my last year, this is I'm going to go out. But I got injured and I just couldn't recover from it. So like halfway through the season, I just said to Vic, after a game actually against Donny Bells away, and we was going for everything then, and I had a shocker, and I hadn't played. So Aaron Empleton, she was Donny, great little left winger, and she murdered me like throughout the game. And you just know, I was like, nah, this is time now.
Did Vic try and persuade you to stay?
I think no, not really.
Perfect.
I think because don't you? Like I've had a great innings, so to speak.
And were you ever tempted to move clubs? Because obviously you spent your entire career there. No. And I know you're a local girl and family history with the club, so it was always only ever going to be Arsenal.
100%. Yeah. It wasn't. I mean, they've offered me to even just stay on in a coaching role, like with the reserves, and I was like, nah. I'm going to get my Sundays back. I've got things to look forward to. It was time, and I I knew at the time, so, yeah, and I couldn't have gone out in a better year, if I've got to be honest. So it was the right decision for me. It was the right decision for the club. And then they just kicked on from that as well. So, yeah, I have no regrets. I miss it, of course, because I miss my teammates, and I made a lot of really good friends, and they're still my best friends. So, and I got to travel. I got to experience and meet a lot of great people along the way and win a bit of silverware. So,
you still got all your medals?
Somewhere. I think my mum's got them somewhere. Yeah. I haven't looked at them for a while. Maybe I should.
Yeah, I think you should go through the archive.
And at this point, of course, there aren't the same, should we say, like drop-down options that you might have now. Like now, you know, I don't know, like a club like Aston Villa or something, or even Spurs. Although Spurs, their investment is going up quite a bit, you know. So like, I think Angie Banks said something very similar. Angie Banks retired, I think, at about 31 because Arsenal got Kelly Smith back. That was her position, and she was like, well, I'm going to be on the bench, and actually there's no other club that I want to go to, so she just called it a day. There wasn't the financial kind of incentive to kind of stick around as well, so it's quite common, I think, for people to call it a day, kind of early 30s, particularly injuries as well. And
yeah, because you didn't have, like, my body was shutting down a bit, obviously for my health, but like you just didn't have back then, you know, the resources or the things. You train with injuries, you know, like your knee would be half over, you know, you strap it up, you put a bit of ice on it, you get on with it. You did, that's what you did. So, but longer term, obviously, that sort of catches up on you. But yeah, no, 100% it was the right period, the right time. And then I retired from football, but then I took up boxing, so just training, but yeah, just to keep fit and everything like that. And then I had to pull back. I ended up having to go on dialysis and have a transplant, but it prolonged me till 2015, and I've got football to thank for keeping me healthy during all that period of time. So yeah, but it was a great time, but you know, things come to an end, don't they?
You retired in 2006. In 2007, Arsenal win the UEFA Cup, which I know you just need to do one more year, Kirsty. No. One more year, which obviously until 2025 they was their only European triumph, but they now won it twice, and they at the time became the only English team to do it, and still are the only English team to do it. It was a different sort of competition back then, Tim. It's changed a lot actually since, you know, the modern version of the Champions League, which is now in the league phase, obviously a group stage. But a lot of the time it was just these two-legged constant knockout games essentially. So let's talk about 2007 season specifically, because it will go down as obviously one of the best in the history of Arsenal women. So you were you covering the team at this point, or just going as a fan?
So I started going as a fan in '96, and Marianne Spacey was a big part of why I went to a game Marianne Spacey played. I thought, wow, and that's year zero for me. But I actually started writing about Arsenal women when they got to that final, because I couldn't believe nobody was writing about it, and so I just thought, oh, well, why don't I do it? The coverage wasn't as kind of thorough as what I do now, but I was like, well, I'm going to these games. I've got the recourse and the platform to do it, so I will. That season, though, there was a group stage. The way the group stage used to happen is exactly like the preliminary rounds happen now. So the group stage would happen in about a week, and they'd host it in one place.
Oh, God, yeah.
And and actually the season Arsenal win it, they draw a Russian team, and it's hosted in Russia, and I think they're there for 8 days, and they play their 3 games. It's round robin, and actually Emma Hayes took the team for the group stage because Vic, and again, this is something that would just be unthinkable now, if there was a clash between the men and the women, which happened less in the 90s because it tended to be Saturday, Sunday, but the more television gets involved on the men's side, the men are playing on Sundays more often. So Emma did manage the team quite a lot. So she took the team in the group stage in Russia for 8 or 9 days. So as much as history will remember her maybe as an assistant, she was, I think it's fair to say, a lot more than that. at Arsenal, so they kind of do that. And then they play, and then it goes into straight knockout, and they play Brøndby in the semi-final, who they also have in the group stage. And I think there was a little bit of needle in the group stage game, and that manifests in the semi-final. And Arsenal win, but Kelly Smith, who we really need to centre very, very significantly in the story of Arsenal women, because she might be the most important player, and obviously she's the only person who's a member of both Champions League winning triumphs. But Kelly came in for rough treatment as a player, it's fair to say, and she had a lot of injuries herself. A lot of this was because other players couldn't handle her, and that either meant they were a yard slower or they just kicked her. Either way, she got injured a lot, and it's fair to say she used to take exception to rough treatment.
I'm not surprised, to be honest. They used to absolutely annihilate it, didn't they? Like consistently. And I think, like anyone, you'd...
And also, to contextualise as well, as we all know, football in the 90s, before, but also the 2000s, wasn't reffed like it is now.
No.
It was much more physical, much more kind of dirty, a lot of cheap shots.
Yeah.
If you ever watch Premier League years on Sky, you will see the kind of stuff where Neil Roddick is essentially just headbutting people under the ref's nose. So it was a different kind of game back then.
Yeah.
It's very different to what we see now.
And so Kelly would stand up for herself because referees wouldn't do it for her, but she gets sent off in the semi-final first leg against Brøndby. She gets sent off for retaliation. For good measure, she swears at the Brøndby fans on her way off. So that turns a one-match ban into a two-match ban, and then she kicks the referee's door off its hinges, and that turns it into a three-match ban, which means if Arsenal go through, not only will she miss the semi-final second leg, she'll miss both legs of the final. And Arsenal really appealed to UEFA, and David Dean was very high up at UEFA. He tried to use his influence. I think they tried to be a bit like, this is a big final and Kelly Smith's maybe the best player in the world. Kelly Smith for Arsenal and Umeya had Marta at the time. These are the best two women's players in the world at the time. And I think Arsenal tried to be like, this could be Kelly Smith versus Marta. And actually, I think now UEFA would be more receptive to that because they would have TV audience
the
and
commercial thing
side
at the front
in their mind.
Yeah.
But they didn't, and so Kelly's not allowed to play. I have been brave enough to say this to Kelly. I actually think in a way that helps Arsenal to win the final, because what it really crystallises, they still have fabulous players. They still have Karen Carney, Rachel Yankee, Leanne Sanderson, Jane Ludlow, Faye White's actually just coming back from an ACL. But it really crystallises that they have to be quite defensive, which is a style Arsenal would never have played at that time. But your successor, Alex Scott, which scores in the first leg, last minute of the first leg in the final, and the second leg I was at Boreham Wood. The players are invited to play at the Emirates. They say, no, we want to play at Meadow Park. We need it on a small crap pitch because we're the underdogs. And they somehow fight out a 0-0 draw. The highlights are available. I mean, I think Umeya hit the crossbar twice. There's a shot where the ball hits the post, hits Emma Byrne on the face and goes out for a corner. And what they do is they really scrap it out and they win the final. But I think they'd had a lot of experience. You guys had been to quarterfinals, you'd been to semi-finals. Yeah. And I think in Europe that IQ helps. And then 1 year it just falls for you, which I think happened to Arsenal women again in 2025. It kind of fell for them. But they'd been to a quarter-final a couple of years before. They'd been to a semi-final a couple of years before. And so you'd plugged away at Europe quite a bit before then.
Yeah, and like you said, it was like a mini tournament. You'd go and play 3 games in a week. I mean, and we wasn't even training twice a week, 3 times a week, playing 3 games in a week. But yeah, semis I think was as far as we got, and it was over 2 legs and things like that. But yeah, no, I was at that game at Onward. I was cheering on my friends. Yeah, it was a great occasion, and with a little bit of luck, but you know that happens, and they did it, and it was an incredible day, and I was their biggest fan on that day.
And someone you know really well, Kirsty, who was, you know, as Tim mentioned, part of the coaching staff, but she arrived just after you left, was Emma Hayes, and you've known her since you were a kid.
Yes.
that was almost like step one in what an incredible journey she's had and is still having. Obviously part of that Arsenal coaching setup, what she achieved with Chelsea, now with the US women's national team, on our TVs during this World Cup, doing her thing. What's it been like to see her journey in women's football? Yeah,
no, I'm very proud of Emma.
Did you know when you met her as a kid she was going to go and do what she's done?
No, really, I don't think. I think we were just two kids playing football at Arsenal. We was teenagers. I was playing for my school in a tournament at the JVC Centre at the time, and I actually got sent off because I ended up I was playing for my school, and this girl, a bit like Kelly Smith at the moment, kept kicking me, giving it like to my face, and I was just like, I was quite, but a bit short fused sometimes. If I'm pushed, I'm an Aries, and she kept getting on, and I ended up giving her a clump, and obviously Vic was refereeing and he was there. He's like, we're gonna have to send you off, and I was like, fine, that was more satisfying. And it's the final anyway. I was like, oh, don't condone that, by the way, but it happened. And then Emma was with her school like watching, so yeah, and we just, I don't know, then we was playing at JVC Centre on a Friday, and we just become mates. I was mates with her younger sister. She was playing for Merry Wall, like youth club, and then come playing at Arsenal, so we played as kids together, and then obviously she got injured, quite a serious injury when she was like 17 through skiing, and she couldn't carry on playing football anymore. So I think her journey was then, I don't think she envisaged that she'd be where she is now, to be honest, like in that coaching and what she's done. But yeah, amazing. She's had an amazing time, did great things at Arsenal at the time, obviously massive part of them winning the Champions League. Don't think people really, like Tim said, acknowledge that as much. Then obviously what she did at Chelsea, and now what she's doing at with the national team, US national team. So she's been on a bit of a journey herself, for sure, from humble beginnings in Camden and to where she's now. So yeah, we're all our mates are like really proud of her. Like we're all best mates, like a lot of us who grew up playing football. So yeah, we're chuffed for her, and she deserves it. She puts a lot of work and effort into it.
Yeah, and I feel like this is still only part of Emma Hayes' journey. There's still so much more to come, I think, of her coaching career,
sure,
which is exciting.
Will be. Yeah.
Tim, that takes us nicely, I guess, onto the WSL era of Arsenal, of which they won many league titles, but their last one coming in 2019, their last FA Cup coming in 2016. So there was, that success and that dominance did kind of carry on into the 2010s. And then the most recent, I guess, post-COVID era has been one that's been a bit more stop-start. But you have that huge Champions League victory in 2025. You have a couple of League Cup titles. But at this point, it feels like the club is back in this exciting place under Renee Slegers. The fandom and the support and the brand of Arsenal Women has never been bigger. That they're in it's such an exciting place in their modern history.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's fair to say after Vic left, they had Laura Harvey for a couple of years, things carried on, but Chelsea start investing, Man City start investing. Arsenal would admit themselves that they were caught off guard a little bit, like in the kind of, because they win the first two WSL titles and then there's a bit of a trail off, and I think the club would admit that they got caught on the back foot by the emergence of, and Liverpool as well, actually. Liverpool won the WSL a couple of times. But what Arsenal have now, you're right, spottier than they should have been in terms of, there's a lot of noise in the Arsenal signal, some real highs, but they haven't competed for the WSL title for a while. What they have now though, and this really counts for them in recruitment, they have that kind of early starters advantage where they've got this history, and they've emblazoned it all over the stadium as well. So a lot of players that we've been talking about today are literally on the side of the Emirates. They've made that the home of the team.
Including Kirsty, you're on there, aren't you? On the Emirates?
I'm in the corner holding the FA Cup.
Yeah, the Marble Halls.
The Marble Halls, that's it.
Yeah,
in front of that. Yeah, that was pretty cool. Yeah, when they asked me to do that, or they said about it, I said, yeah, that'd be nice.
And a lot of that, when you go to Colney, Tim, when we do press conference or things like that, the fact that they've got their own area of the training ground at Colney, but they've also got all the pictures of those successes, which not many women's teams can say the same.
Yeah, absolutely. And even having someone like Kelly Smith on staff, so when Alessia Russo was signed, that was a big part of it. It was, am I going to work with Kelly? Like one of her heroes growing up. But what Arsenal really have, as well as that sense of history, because they started this journey much earlier than their contemporaries, it also means they've got the crowds as well. And that's something, particularly in recruitment at the moment. When Arsenal go into the market for a player, it's much more competitive. But what they can say is, we can offer you the same money as these clubs, and you play in front of 30,000 every week. And that's a huge competitive advantage. It might not last forever. Hopefully it won't. Hopefully other teams start to come to that level in terms of attendance. But right now they've got it. And that gives them a lot of extra revenue as well. So I think the next couple of years for Arsenal should really be about consolidating the fact that they make more money than most other women's clubs, and the fact that they can offer that can another women's team in the world offer that? Like NWSL clubs get good crowds, but not quite at the 30, 40, sometimes 60,000. So when they go to a player like Georgia Stanway, for example, it's salary wise, we can compete with everyone. We can go further than most, but maybe there are 3 or 4 choices for you. That's a real big competitive advantage to be able to say to players.
Kirsty, what is it like to see this team now, playing pretty much all their home games at the Emirates?
That's pretty cool.
In front of, 20,000 plus on average, sometimes complete sellouts, fans with names on the back of their shirts. I mean, it must be amazing for you to see that.
Oh, it's amazing for the women's game, isn't it? And Arsenal as well. Like sellout crowds. I mean, I never would have thought that. I remember going to the Euro final, and I remember getting really emotional and upset watching that, being there and being part of that. And then I think that was the massive turning point for me, just to watch them win it, but also see players that have gone through that grind as well, like the likes of Jill Scott and her getting a medal. I thought, oh wow, that's pretty spectacular. And I think from there it's gone another level. And I think Arsenal hosting their games at the Emirates, it shows that there's a fan base there. I think they've got it's a real good feel about it. It's a good community. It always has been. I mean, when I played, we wasn't getting thousands and thousands of people, but it's always been, like a family, really, so to speak. So, I've managed to come to some of the games this year. It's spectacular. And like you say, seeing young girls, young boys, families come in, names on shirts, it's pretty incredible. And it blows me away, really, to think about that and how lucky the girls are now, really. I'd have loved to have played in those days, like in these days, really, in that sense, in big crowds. I wouldn't change what I had, but it is good, and long may it continue. And it's like, as Tim mentioned earlier, let's hope other clubs, that happens for them in the future as well, for sure.
Well, Kirsty, thank you so much for coming on and
thanks very much. No,
taking
really
this
nice
trip down memory lane. It's been amazing.
Thank you.
Tim, thank you as always. Been so great for you to kind of be able to share some of that history, because like you say, Kirsty, I think, that Wembley final in 2022 was such a defining moment for women's football in this country, and so much fandom that we see now, was created in one match. And I think it's really important that we talk about some of the history that came before that and reflect on the journey that women's football's been on, but also, the players like yourself who were part of that journey. So, Tim, thank you so much.
Pleasure. And I'd say in closing as well, one of the things women's football has to do now, you mentioned, growing up on a council estate and all of that, Kirsty, a lot of the players we've talked about did come from quite humble backgrounds, and actually that's changed, and it needs to kind of change back again, so that, girls playing on estates in Hackney or wherever are still coming through, because that's definitely changed in the last 10 years. It's become quite a middle class sport. So
I completely agree with you. And someone that works in Camden, local authority, and being a community officer myself, I run girls' football programs in Camden, and it's, it's so important that we're identifying players coming from the real grassroots, because there's so much talent. It's where I come from, it's where Rachel Yankee come from. There's Mary Phillips, the Katie Chapmans, and a lot of the previous England internationals come from is their inner city boroughs. So I think it's very, very important.
And what we're hoping to do as well is do more episodes like this where we dive into club-specific history, bring on guest players and talk about some of those amazing memories. So thank you to you both. We'll be back with another episode next week. We'll see you then.